So let us start by taking 3 deep breaths, and during the exhalation, allow your whole body to relax. Let us inhale and exhale, relaxing. Allow your whole body to relax. And let's inhale again. And exhale, relaxing. And once more, inhale deeply. And exhale, relaxing. Allow all muscles to relax. Muscle relaxation is extremely variable for meditation. So now feel your feet. Bring the attention to your feet. And allow all muscles in your feet to relax. Feel now your calves. And same thing, allow your calves to let go and relax. Bring the attention to your thighs. And allow your thighs to relax. Relax now your buttocks and abdomen. And relax also your stomach. And relax your chest. Relax now your shoulders and arms. And hands. And take a moment to most especially relax your neck, front, back, and both sides. Relax now your back from the coccyx to the neck. Now relax your face. Start with the jaw, mouth, cheeks and nose. Relax the eyes and eyelids. Imagine your eyes like floating in a sea of tranquility. And relax now your eyebrows and forehead so that your whole face is completely and deeply relaxed. Relax now your scalp and ears. And gently scan all your body. And if you find any tension, just let it go. Now gently notice the different sounds and noises in the environment, allowing everything to be as it is. Notice all of them at the same time as if you have spherical hearing, which is the case. But it is like opening your attention in all directions at once. Hearing from all directions at once. So you are now aware of all sounds, all noises from all directions. and simply step back one tiny step from being aware of the noises and sounds to be awareness itself. So just gently step back and rest as awareness, forgetting all sounds. And just rest as awareness. It is as simple as forgetting all sounds and rest now as awareness. Forget all sensations, thoughts and feelings, and just rest as your true nature, which is awareness of consciousness. Now you can gently open your eyes and see if you can maintain a little bit of the interiorization of awareness into itself or source, even with eyes open, so that you don't become completely disconnected. And this form of meditation leads us immediately into the subject for today, which is what we do with the organism and its programs. Do we control it? Do we let it be? When control stops? When it starts? In non-duality, quite often we are encouraged to let go and do not control, right? So it's quite a paradoxical thing, in fact, because on one hand, we know that what is optimized. What does it mean that is optimized? It means that what is the perfect situation that helps the most each and all of the organisms, the mind-body organisms in the universe to evolve, to grow. So the idea of interfering is, on the other hand, coming away from the optimum. From a spiritual perspective, you may remember when you were into the spiritual path, right? You were dividing between positive and negative, and then we all need to move to the positive, right? But on the other hand, you may have, in fact, noticed that what seems to be negative eventually was turning into the most valuable experiences. So we were avoiding the negative, but at the same time, we were seeing that the time that we grew the most was when we were going through something difficult, that the mind was considering negative, but in reality it was a challenge for us to overcome and to grow in the process. So this division between positive and negative is artificial, meaning that is a division that is created by the mind. But what seems negative many times is the best. We have seen that so many times in our own experience, right? So, at least here there is kind of the conclusions through the years that the equation between negative and positive is optimized by the cosmic intelligence for the sake of progress, for the so-called souls or mind-body organisms with their subtle bodies. And still that's a belief, right? So the mind-body organism is far from perfect because it is an organism that is part of duality, and therefore it has imperfections. In the physical it's totally evident, and in the mental too. No escapes. So, but it's progressing, right? We notice that there is a progress. It can be very slow, unfortunately, but it progresses. So this progress seems at least to have some significance and to be something to encourage. Why? Because if the mind-body organism doesn't progress, what happens is that there will be emotional issues and mental issues and physical issues that will have enough strength and intensity to bring you back into identification. So consciousness has created the whole show, but it created it in a way that it has the mind-body organism and this life in duality is a good match for it. Otherwise, it would be boring, right? So what does it mean that it's a good match to it? It means that these organisms, these mind-body organisms, have the capacity to put consciousness to sleep, to bring it into identification. And what does it mean to be in identification? It means that what is happening to the organism is understood or perceived as is happening to me. It's not, obviously it's not. Anyone that has awakened will tell you, no, it's not happening to you, it's happening to the mind-body organism, it's not happening to you. But even after awakening, you know, and you experience moments of identification where the mind-body organism, again, it identifies you with its intense emotions or its intense sensations or an intense, painful, negative thought. So correcting these problems in the mind-body organism allows for more comfortable disidentification from it. So there is value in helping the organism to move towards a better functioning, a higher functioning, to solve its issues, physical and mental, and energetic also, at the energy level. And obviously that requires a certain restraint. It's not your restraint, but you need to restrain the mind-body organism a little bit. Now, we will, when I use that terminology, obviously, immediately you see the duality of the sentence. There is a subject that needs to control the behavior of an object, which is the mind-body organism. So language is describing here something that needs to be clarified. What is the subject and what is the object, right? So the object is the mind-body organism. That's pretty simple, not that complex. But who is restraining it? And that leads to a great paradox in non-duality, because without going into the whole issue of full non-duality, just oneness, just to the fact that in the first step of realization, we realize that we are consciousness. And consciousness is non-dual, right? From that realization, you can say, well, the I, the me, that was supposed to be here, I think somebody's knocking on the door, but maybe not. So the mind-body organism needs, like I said, it needs to be restrained. But who is going to restrain it? Awakening brings you to the realization that, in fact, there is no I, no me. It was a whole story of language and words that created a fake me, not a real me, a conceptual I that was never there in the first place. It was just created by language. It's part of the mind-body organism in terms of thoughts and ideas about me and the corresponding feelings. So when that is realized, and that is what awakening is about, that the me was a story, which creates amazing changes, of course, then you can say, well, there is no one here. And if there is no one here, which is a pointer that we hear quite often, right? If there is no one here, then who is going to restrain the mind-body organism? And on the other hand, this has been, I would say, used as an excuse by quite renowned teachers to do things that are less than ideal, right? That seem to be very unconscious, in fact. And say, so sorry, there's total unconcern here for what happened, but in reality, there's nowhere here to be concerned about it, right?
That makes sense to me.
Sorry?
That makes sense to me.
That makes sense to you?
Absolutely. There's no one here.
Right, there's no one here.
So it is to be concerned about a mind-body organism. It
Right.
isn't real.
Right, okay. See, but still, if the mind-body organism, because what Diane is saying, it doesn't make sense to me. It makes sense to me, Diane is saying, because there's no one here, so who is going to be concerned about the mind-body organism? Right. And the problem remains that if the mind-body organism does stupid things, it will have enough, those stupid things can bring enough problems and emotional upheavals to bring you back into identification. Do you see that? So that is the problem. If we were completely above everything, so that after, I don't know, some type of extraordinary awakening where you are like Ramana Maharshi into a total obliviousness of the whole thing and you never experience any identification, okay, but it's not the case. Because we all know that awakening comes, and for the most part, to most individuals, they realize that there is no one there, but still identification happens. Moments of identification do happen, and especially under the effect of a high emotional problem, an emotional problem that is loaded, or an extremely painful sensation. An experience that really challenges your very survival, not your very survival, but the very survival of the mind-body organism. Like Nisargadatta, for example, he was so up there, and when his doctor told him that he had cancer, Nisargadatta confessed that he had a moment of identification and fear. And when Christ is in the Mount of Olives, he says, "Father, take this cup away from my lips, if it's possible." That means that he's recognizing that what is coming is so painful that it may bring him into identification, and he wants that thing, if it's possible, not to happen. But his wish was not granted, right? For the benefit of everyone. That's the story, right? So we're not completely free from identification until you are totally, absolutely free of identification. I would highly recommend that you keep an eye on what this organism, this mind-body organism, is doing. Now, who is going to keep an eye? That's the interesting question again, because there is no one here, right? So who's going to keep the eye on that? Right? The question, the paradox still is there. So let's try to solve, to give an answer that may be satisfying for the intellect. There seems to be something that could be called, you can call it in any way you want, okay? But it has to be lived in order to, or experienced in order to identify what it is. So I'm just inventing a word that may come close or not, but I would call it abiding. Abiding. What abiding is, or seems to be, is like, picture when you have a coat, right? And you grab the coat and you put it and you keep it tight to your body, and it's like now the coat and you are the same. Yeah, that would be like abiding in the coat. Well, the identification with now not with a thing but with consciousness itself can have that quality, in the sense that when there is this strong identification not with something else but with just consciousness, there is a sense of abiding there, and there is a sense that consciousness, in a way, because it has no limitations, is also personal. And I'm not saying that it's your persona, not the persona that you invented, right? That we invented when we were 3 years old, or our parents invented for us. But consciousness is very much alive and capable of, by itself, controlling this mind-body organism and not allowing it to do whatever it wants. So we could say that after awakening especially, the controlling that thing called the mind-body organism and setting limits to it is a good idea, no doubt, so that we don't go back into identification, and is done by consciousness itself. Nobody's doing it. But you as consciousness, you're doing it. So you set limits to the organism. The organism is highly programmed. It's like a supercomputer, it's highly programmed, and the programs are less than ideal. There are programs there that are problematic. And even you as consciousness, I guarantee you that you have created as consciousness, we all have created as consciousness, a mind-body organism that is enough challenging for you to, and it will not be easy to control it. If you think that you have complete power of the mind organism because you are consciousness, yes, it's true. But in an ultimate analysis, the match is very tight. Yeah? And you will have to make an effort to control. It is true that from the identity as consciousness, or the identification with consciousness itself in that abiding, there is much more power to control the mind-body organism than from the false me that never existed, of course. But still that work needs to be done. When this identification with the mind-body organism and with all its sensations and feelings and emotions and so on has become so solidified that you are beyond everything, then give up all control. In the meantime, I highly recommend that you use common sense. I have seen people that wake up, and they have serious problems in the mind-body organism. Alcohol problems, sexual problems. Eating disorder problems. And if you wake up and you say, well, there is now nobody here, the mind-body organism can go rampant into all these addictions to begin with, and many more other things. Because awakening doesn't make the mind-body organism perfect at all, Yes, Diane, please. You were going to say something? No? I'm sorry. Okay.
It's kind of like reminds me of something that you said to me the other day, from the perspective of most people that pray, it's like backwards. Like you said, I forget what you called it. There was a type of Buddhism. The one type is mind-body organism praying to God. But the reverse of that is the consciousness controlling the mind-body organism. So it's kind of like, when you look at it that way, then you have more control.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Right. Yes, what Mindy is saying she reminded me of something that we have discussed in a previous satsang, which is, it's very simple. It's when you were into the bhakti yoga path, perhaps some of you were there, and you were praying to God and trying to get the attention of the divine to get what you wanted, even if you were looking for liberation, which is the highest prayer or enlightenment. And then in the path of bhakti yoga, you are encouraged to purify your inner dialogue here in the head, right? Your mental regurgitations, right? Which they keep going, not because now you're a bhakti, your mind is silent. Then you're encouraged to purify this internal dialogue by using it to talk to God. And in some traditions it's called practicing the presence of God. And they will encourage you to talk to God. Yeah. So it's supposed to do something positive, which in some cases may be useful. I remember when I was in that bhakti path, I would say that it was not that useful. And the problem with the technique is that it encourages identification with the me. So here is me talking to God outside, right? So you identify yourself even further and deeper into, I am this little being outside God, talking to it. Before the bhakti path, it was even worse. Before you entered the bhakti path, you were having a dialogue here that it was me talking to me. I am talking to myself, right? Me, a false entity, talking to me, another false entity. The result is just, illusion. So your internal dialogue is constantly sustaining the false, sustaining the identification with the me. It's a horrible, horrible way to live. And it's the way most of the population, most of people in this world live, in that internal dialogue that is sustaining constantly the illusion of the me. So as I said, then we move, supposedly one step further and we talk to God, but still we're encouraging identification. So eventually, if you're lucky and you come to a path like Advaita or Non-Duality, then something quite different begins to happen, and you will be encouraged to do a different trick, which is, instead of talking to God, to wake up, realize that there is no me, that it is a story, that there is no little self inside, there is no other being inside except awareness. Awareness is not a separate being, it's just, the divine looking through all the mind-body organisms of the universe. Is undifferentiated. So once that is understood properly and is realized, is seen inside through keen observation, then what happens is that this dialogue between me and me doesn't make sense, right? And this dialogue between me and God doesn't make sense either, right? Because you are God. You realize that the divine is you and you are the divine, and there cannot be any other possibility. So now you can say, well, the Buddhist texts and the other scriptures, they talk about the Buddhic mind and the lower mind. And they say that in the Buddhic mind, or the higher mind, these are thoughts, same as the lower mind is thoughts, basically. So the higher mind or the Buddhic mind are thoughts that come directly from consciousness. That consciousness is controlling the mental process, right? And the thoughts are generated from consciousness. So, okay, now then we can do that. The awakening brings the awakening of the Buddhic mind, which are thoughts that come from consciousness, and now you can use that thinking process to talk now to the organism, So now you are, to use the word God, now you are God and you're talking to the mind-body organism, and that creates detachment from the mind-body organism instead of identification, like in the Bhakti path. So that is a very nice step forward in the process of embodiment, because awakening may have happened already. The identification with consciousness is already there, and still, this dialogue needs to be purified. It needs to the internal dialogue has to be based on truth, not on the. Now, if you can actually obliterate the dialogue and have a totally quiet mind, by all means, that's even better, right? But it depends on the type of brain that you have. Some brains will do that. They will quiet, yeah, and other brains will keep going. so you need to choose according to the situation. If you can completely quiet the mind all the time, you don't need to do this trick. If you cannot, I highly recommend that you as consciousness, you take control of the mind, yeah, and in your internal dialogue, you talk to the organism instead of talking me to me or me to God. And in this talking to the organism, it comes great power to encourage the mind-body organism, to help the organism to shift, to change, to become more flexible, more free of habits, free of wrong habits, free of addictions, free of all the things that in potential can bring you back into identification. So you use this dialogue. How you use this dialogue is picture that you as consciousness, you are the best counselor your mind-body organism can ever have, right? Because it's a counseling that happens instantaneously, in the moment, in the here and now, when the problem is going on. You don't need to wait for the next appointment with your psychotherapist. No, it happens in the here and now immediately. You tune with, you talk from the perspective, you identify yourself with consciousness, and then you talk to the body and you advise the body in the right direction, right? So it's a counseling that is of immense value, and anyone that has done counseling in their life will feel very comfortable with this approach. So those online, I encourage you to ask questions using the chat room, and same here. Sorry if I use these sunglasses at this time of the day. It looks funny, I know, but these eyes are having a kind of a photosensitivity these days that is uncomfortable.
My body organism, this looks really cool.
Yes.
When people talk about consciousness, they often make it sound like it's a very passive nothing. And from my experience, consciousness is much more active. It has like a harmonizing effect on things, a healing effect, and it's intelligent. And
Right.
The more aware I am, the more an intelligent, effective behavior happens automatically.
Yes.
The less conscious I am, the less aware, the more the behavior is off.
Right.
So it's not like when you become nobody that who's to control it.
Right.
It's like when you become nobody, basically consciousness is in control, and it's going to naturally influence behavior to be more appropriate.
Yes, it will.
Except when identification comes in.
It will. So Roy is saying, for those online, if you couldn't hear him, that in his experience, consciousness is not a passive non-existence or emptiness or something like that. It's very real, it's very active, it's very dynamic, and it's capable of influencing behavior and of course influencing thoughts, as we were mentioning a moment ago. So I absolutely agree with that. Consciousness is life itself, and all the acting, doing, happening is happening because of consciousness. Consciousness is doing everything because there is no other being there. Yeah. So this idea that we wake up into the nothingness and then there is nothing inside, it's it's another belief. It becomes another belief that interferes. It's not so. Yes.
So this method that you talked about, that's been really helpful lately to me. But sometimes I can't. How do you know when consciousness is directing the mind, body, organism, or if that's some other voice? That's, how can you tell if that's the intellect saying, okay?
Yes, you're trying to discern when that voice is the Buddhic mind or is the lower mind acting. Yes.
I can tell when I've recently been talking to other people and came out with some great stuff to tell them, like friends,
Right.
They're like, wow, that was really insightful, and it just came through like that.
That's right.
Kind of like when music comes
Right.
through.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the personal mind-body organism,
When it comes to your personal problems,
yeah, my personal.
not your personal
No,
problem, but the
your
problems
personal
of the
problems
mind-body
of this
organism. Yes.
It's getting easier from that perspective. Has helped me really a lot. But then I have to just really make sure that that's the Buddhist mind talking,
Right.
and not just
Okay, so Mindy is saying, okay, how we discern if when we are, under the challenge of something that really affects the mind-body organism, that really creates intense emotions or intense sensations of pain, and how we can discern that the thoughts that are coming into the mind are really coming from consciousness with the wisdom that comes from consciousness, or they are coming from the lower mind and the mind-body organism with its complaints and with its issues. And I would say that the one of the fundamental things here is the word complain. Yeah, if there is resistance or complaint, which is very close, if the thoughts are reflecting resistance and complaint, it means that they are coming from the lower mind. Yeah, and if the thoughts are coming with words of acceptance and wisdom, or even if there is an encouragement to do a good fight, or to take a position that is strong but is coming from a center of wisdom, you will recognize that. You will learn to differentiate these things, and it's not that difficult to discern these two minds, right? These two type of thoughts, because it's no more than that. So here is just a second. Let me give a little bit of time to those online. It says, to clarify terms, this is Lance. To clarify terms is only one self in your email, consciousness, as you are using the term now, pure consciousness, pure awareness. Okay. Yes, obviously there is only one consciousness, one awareness, one self, seeing through the mind-body organism of countless beings through the universe. It's just one. There is no two. Not a second consciousness. So, inside the mind-body organism, there is only the divine consciousness or the cosmic consciousness looking through it. And when we say there is no one here, you can in fact shift that thought into there is no one else here. Yeah? There is just consciousness and there is no one else here. And in fact, I would say that it's a better pointer than there is no one here that has created problems, because when we say there is no one here, then people conclude then there is no one here to do anything, there is no one here to control anything, there is no one here. And you see how this can create confusion, and then big confusion, because eventually this brings problems that lead to identification. I hope that answers your question, Lance. If not, please let me know. I will try again. And by the way, his question raises a different issue also. That is, the word self. We could. I equated it a moment ago to the self as the formless. But there is another way to call the self, to equate the word self, which is not the formless necessarily, but the allness. The formless is consciousness seen through the countless forms or countless mind-body organisms through the universe, including plants, animals, and human beings, and reptilians. And the mantis and so on. Okay, whatever, the cosmic consciousness looking through all of them. We can say the self is that, or we could say that the whole universe, and this is called the allness, right, instead of the emptiness or the consciousness. So the allness is when we say the self is the allness, we're saying that the whole universe, including what sees through it, what sees or perceives through all the mind-body organism, including awareness, the whole thing is one thing. Yeah, there's no separation, and the only way that we can create the separation between formless and form, and the multiple separations that we apparently see in the universe, the only way that we can create this separation is through language. So if we remove language out of the picture, then we are left with one huge organism called the universe that is unfolding automatically all by itself, and there's nobody there, right? No separate body there. From that perspective, it's very difficult, from that ultimate perspective of the allness, is very difficult to even conceive this whole subject that we have been discussing today. Yeah, so I have not used that realization in order to talk about this. I have used the realization of the formless. Now you could say non-duality is, the allness. Non-duality is just, full non-duality. I don't want anything else. I don't want to compromise and blah, blah, blah. I understand that. But the problem is that I think we are talking about something that has been explained in the scriptures as, and this is an interpretation, okay? And it may be completely wrong, but let's try. It seems to be the explanation for the words of Christ that says nobody goes to the Father if it's not through me, which means nobody goes to the oneness or allness if it's not through the formless first, which means that before you attain the realization that you are everything, it's easier to attain the realization, and it's necessary, at least for a lot of people, to attain the realization that you are pure consciousness, that you are the consciousness in the universe. The formless, not the allness, including all forms. So, in yoga, this might have been described as Christ consciousness versus cosmic consciousness in the teachings, for example, of Yogananda. He separated these two, yeah? Where Christ consciousness would be, Christ means consciousness, so it's a kind of it's redundant, but anyway, it means, the abiding as pure consciousness or the formless, attaining that realization, at least in his teachings, has to do with opening the center in between the eyes, and then the next step is cosmic consciousness, which has to do with the crown chakra or crown center. These are things that you don't need to be concerned about whatsoever, but just for the sake of clarification. So, Roy, you wanted to ask a
I
question.
just wanted to comment on Didi. You were asking like how to differentiate between thoughts that are coming from ego versus thoughts that are coming from awareness. And one thing came to mind is thoughts that are concerned with gain or loss might be ego-based.
Well, I mean, like when you're trying to solve a problem and you want to come from the place of consciousness, I want to make sure that the answers that are coming through me are not the ego and consciousness. I mean, it's getting easier.
Let me, for those online, let me clarify what Roy said, because it's an excellent tool to discern what Mindy is saying, which is, well, when we know, that the thoughts are coming from the ego, are coming from the Buddhic mind or consciousness, then he says thoughts that come from the ego will have a connection with either gain or loss, and I really like that because that's exactly what the ego is, as a mechanism, as a mental mechanism, is concerned about, is what is here for me, right? And will I lose something? What if I lose something? So the ego is a machine that is constantly spinning around that, and that can give you an excellent, pointer to see where your thoughts are coming from. Yes, Mindy.
Oh no, that was really excellent.
Okay.
That was excellent, helpful.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Here, Jim is saying, is the formless the same as emptiness? Yes, I would say so. The formless is the same as emptiness. Now, emptiness is a term that perhaps I would reserve it to an aspect of consciousness. See, consciousness is, as Roy was explaining, is dynamic, is flowing. Yeah, is this perceiving as a verb? Notice that it's a verb. Perceiving is a verb. This perceiving of all the inputs that are coming, are being noticed or perceived by consciousness. This perceiving, I would say that in that regard, consciousness is a verb more than a noun. Now, there seems to be a state where consciousness withdraw itself, or awareness withdraw itself, in deep meditation into itself, like the exercise we were doing a moment ago during the meditation, and as it withdraws into itself, it comes to a point where we could say that awareness has disappeared. But it's not that it has really disappeared. It has become totally interiorized. Yeah. So we could say with more precision that attention has disappeared, in the sense that nothing is being given attention whatsoever. And then, as a result of that enormous interiorization of consciousness, then there is this realization that is called the nothingness, because in that there is nothing, nothingness, the void, the emptiness. Another name that perhaps is even more productive and beneficial would be, instead of nothingness, beingness. Because the only thing that is not gone at that moment is beingness.
Oh, beingness.
Beingness.
Yes.
Beingness. That is not gone. Attention is gone. The objects of perception are gone. The sensory inputs are gone. Everything is gone, but beingness is there. So beingness is the best name, probably better than nothingness or void, to describe that state. And it has been called, if I remember, something like Sankhaya or Sahaya Samadhi.
Sahaja.
Sahaya Samadhi, right. But again, is we are talking about the same, the formless, but the formless flowing out or flowing in, yeah, inwards, and staying inwards.
That would be what people call nirvikalpa samadhi.
So Roy is saying that people call this nirvikalpa samadhi.
Why
Yeah,
not?
I think that these are a little bit of, there's quite a few definitions there, like, because, for example, in the teachings of Yogananda, which were the teaching that I learned some of the things, nirvikalpa samadhi was reserved, in fact, not for Sahaya Samadhi, which is the total interiorization in deep meditation, but the total identification with the divine in the activity, in the middle of activity, meaning Samadhi in the activity. Yeah,
Oh, that's not typical yogic.
yeah, it's atypical, yes.
The usual yogic literature says nirvikalpa samadhi is when you're withdrawn from all objects into pure
Yeah,
formless consciousness, and
Right.
sahaja is open-eyes samadhi, where you're in samadhi and functioning in the world.
right. So Roy is saying that would be, Yogananda might have been an atypical definition. But anyway, these are definitions. Is just that, and these things are experiences available, and that's all. The pursuing of spiritual experiences is something that I would say that it's not desirable, because it will put you in a spin, turning you into a seeker again. Yeah. So once the awakening happens and you realize that never was me, it's a good idea to stop the search. And it's still paradoxical, because the mind-body organism is far from perfect, so still there will be there some level of search, but it will be devoid of what could be rightly called spiritual anxiety. The spiritual anxiety of having to attain or obtain some particular spiritual experiences or group of spiritual experiences, which is something that kind of accompanies every seeker throughout their search. It's kind of a quiet desperation. I'm trying hard and meditating so much, and it's not happening, and all of that. That is a whole mental conundrum around seeking that creates a lot of unhappiness. So a spiritual experience like that, yeah, you can summon them, create the intention. It would be nice to have them, and perhaps meditate and see if they come to you, but in a relaxed way, without any training or discipline to, I have to attain this. This is my salvation, my salvation. I have to be saved.
Then it becomes seeking.
Then you become a seeker, and with great identification with that position. So any other question online or in person?
I think in the email you said that you were going to talk about how not to get caught up in egoic behavior even after awakening.
Okay, so Roy is saying that in the email I said how to not get caught in ego behaviors after awakening. Yeah, I don't remember exactly that wording, but possibly something similar. And the answer to that is, again, is very simple. It has been kind of addressed. Is you you identify yourself with consciousness, and from this consciousness you you take hold of the mind uh, by activating the intuitive thoughts, so to speak, using the mind, you as consciousness, or not interfering with that. That's another way to put it. And then from that, you guide the organism towards behaviors that are guided by wisdom. Wisdom is not um, it's not just realizing that you are the formless, or realizing that you are the allness. It also needs to be embodied in behavior, meaning that in behavior our the actions of the mind body organism have to reflect wisdom. The thoughts of the mind body organism need to reflect wisdom. The feelings of the mind body organism need to reflect wisdom. Wisdom needs to be reflected, embodied in all these levels and aspects. Now, good luck. It's an ideal, don't take it too seriously. See, as long as there is this identification, then this game of bringing the mind-body organism into alignment, and failing miserably many times, becomes fun. Yeah, not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's not a serious business. But yeah, I would take a moment to use the word me and my and I to explain this. But I coming here, there was this was coming a little bit late, and on top of it there was a great jam to enter the freeway, and the the lights are poorly coordinated, so that the cars in front of me having were not crossing that intersection twice with green light, meaning that the car on top, he didn't have the assertiveness to just go and get it, and cross the intersection at the risk of perhaps blocking the cars from the other side. And it was looking really bad. The whole thing was stuck. So I signaled to the right, and finally I was able to do this, to move to the right. And then I went through a whole block, and I had to turn left, and I didn't have the access to the left. The arrows were not allowing me to turn left. So basically, I turned left illegally. And this led into taking some risk to get a ticket, and then I moved eventually towards the freeway. Still was jammed. I had to wait, and there was this real having fun with what the organism had done, which seemed to be more like a teenager driving than a 60-year-old man, driving that truck. But so in the dialogue with the organism, there was this, hey, calm down, and what are you doing? You're 60 already. You shouldn't be doing those things. And there was so much laughing about it, So this identification is more important than correcting the mind-body organism and then making it perfect, because it will never be perfect. So this process of disciplining the organism and setting limits to it has to be done with fun and enjoyment. And forget it, it's never going to be perfect. Yes?
One of the ways I cultivate wisdom is by thinking how my behavior will benefit the greater good.
Yes. Of course. So Roy is saying a good way to discern also about behavior is whether his behavior is going to benefit, is going to be for the highest good, right? Yes, and obviously violating traffic laws is not for the highest good. But it could be, says Diane says it could be, right? Well, it was definitely good for this organism.
Good for the satsang.
I know the Bible at heart. I love to violate rules.
Diane loves to violate rules. See, that's her mind-body organism talking there. You know, she loves to violate rules. Yes, the human rules, you know, are there to be violated. No, the human rules are there, and they have some value. Many of them have value. Many of these rules, especially in the traffic, you know, they have great value. But on the other hand, let's face it, they are human laws, and they're far from perfect also. So sometimes, you know, you will make small traffic violations that are totally harmless. Yes.
You know, in Buddhism, I know that there's different, like the 4 somethings and then the 8 something, and I forgot what they're called, because I get this little email sometimes from this Buddhist.com, and it has interesting things and the precepts of, you know, follow this, but it kind of relates to the right behavior. And so I guess if you wanted to know what the right behavior is, some of those things are interesting to read. They're not rules per se, like in organized religion. They're not
right. Well, today, you know, I had an email from an old client that she had a clear awakening years ago. She signed for the awakening protocol. She had been in the yoga path for 20 years or more, was a teacher, a trainer, and very, very good in her specialty, a high difficult aspect or methodology of the hatha yogas. And then she signed for this, you know, awakening protocol that perhaps she didn't have much expectations. She just was curious and had the money to pay it. And so we had the awakening protocol, and in those 3 hours, she had a clear awakening. And then I would say that through the years, she has maintained her awakening to some degree, but at the same time, the mind-body organism had to deal with quite a few things, that were significant. So in this process, she tells me in her email that she has been going again into the, I think, sutras, or the 8 steps of Patanjali that start with Yama Niyama. And then she has been looking into Yama Niyama. And when she read the email that you received, then she was reminded of, and she noticed that she was dealing with behavior, looking at this Yama Niyama recommendations, right? So, as Mindy is saying, in Buddhism, you know, there are so many recommendations about Yama Niyama, or do's and don'ts. Same in Hinduism, same in the yogis, same the Christian traditions with the 10 Commandments and all these recommendations. And they are no more than that. They are just recommendations, because every situation in life can be extremely complex, and then it needs to be discerned from the Buddhic mind. It needs to be discerned from intuition, and it cannot be discerned just by following a rule. And the sad part of the rule, the good part of the rules, obviously, is that it helps the aspirant in the beginnings of the path, yeah, and hopefully they will let it go. The problem is that many times they don't let go of that soon enough, and then they become fanatics about the do's and don'ts, and their 10 commandments or their yama niyama or whatever. And then with this, then it becomes more an obstacle to growth than something that helps. It's meant to be for individuals that are at the beginning of the path. Once you are connecting really with intuition, you need to let go of those things. So I hope that answers your question, Mindy.
I was just making a comment. I think that the main thing that helps the most is to be compassionate with yourself and with others.
Compassionate with yourself? I would say that what really helps is to be compassionate with the mind-body organism. It's an imperfect mechanism, right? So let's see how language can produce an immense confusion, because if I say myself, then I'm recognizing that there is a little self here that is separated from consciousness, and that thing is the very corner of illusion. So there is no separate self. Really, there is no little self. There is no little consciousness there, not here, not there, not everywhere. And that is, the essence of the whole teachings of Advaita and non-duality. So words where the word self is included need to be used very carefully, like yourself, self-respect, self-esteem, self-development, self-concept. All these self-something are very confusing words for the seeker, and they promote exactly what you don't want to have in your life, which is confusion and identification with a false little self that is not there.
What I really need is compassion for the mind-body organism.
Yes, compassion for the mind-body organism is perfectly clear, because it will keep you away from that identification.
However, when you talk to people, it's very difficult to replace self-respect by something else, right? Because that's what society, because that's what we have an agreement about, that it means that, even though if we can, in aparte, clarify what we mean, there is no one word. There is a sentence, but there is no one word.
Yes, this is a problem with the language that is very real. What Evelyn is saying, she's saying, well, language is an agreement, right? So let's say you are giving a talk to people that have no idea of non-duality, and you need to use the idea, the concept of self-respect or self-worth or self-whatever. And then instead of that, you say, well, and respect for the mind-body organism, and they will look at you like, what? What are you saying, right? So, yes, because language is an agreement, right? So when we violate the agreement with something that is foreign to most people participating, then of course it will create reactions. But most important, is that you have the ideas clear here, that you apply this type of language that comes from non-duality in your own internal dialogue, so that doesn't lead you into identification and confusion. And when the word self comes into your head here, don't use it. Just use the word mind-body organism. And then you will not be confused. When you need to give a talk to individuals that have no idea about this, because they are in the first steps of metaphysics, well, you have no choice. You will say self-respect. You will say self-esteem, right? That's okay. Eventually, there is a certain there's a certain value to the metaphysical journey where we are into self-improvement, which in reality is improvement of the mind, body, organism, because you as consciousness, you don't need to be improved whatsoever. But there is a certain value because hopefully that work will produce certain results. What are the results? The results is the removal of some obstacles in the mind, body, organism that are preventing, the organism to work in a more healthy way, physically and mentally. We are really past the time. Let's stop here. I want to mention to all of you three little things. Look, first of all, if you want to give a donation, in the email that I sent to everyone, there's a link, and you can go to a button in our website, and you can make a small donation. The suggested donation is $15 for these satsang events. The other thing is that for those of you that have not gone through the awakening protocol with me, I recommend it. Even if you are already seeing the kind of catching the awakening and becoming more and more established into the awakening state, I recommend it because I have seen over and over that really helps. You can find information in the website by clicking first in a tab that is called, well, in the same email I put a link that goes to that particular page. The second thing I want to mention, or third, is that I offer through the Brain Optimization Institute some tuition-free classes. There are 6 hours of training in either brain optimization with emphasis in nutrition, or life coaching with emphasis in cognitive psychology, or 6 hours of training in psychology of consciousness with emphasis in non-duality. You're welcome to ask for these classes. They are free and they have valuable content. So you just go to the website, you will see a tab at the top, it says free tuition, free classes, and you click there and you will see it's kind of self-explanatory from then on.
Are they videos or
videos? There are 3 hours video each one of the classes, and there are 2 classes for each one of the courses. And they're valid for the certification if you later you want to go for the certification.
There's also a free test for the brain.
Sorry?
There's also a free test for the brain to determine your brain.
Yes, there is also a free test there in the website if you want to determine the health of your brain from this perspective of the neurotransmitters. Now, of course, is the brain that you as consciousness are using to be able to interface with the physical world. So talk about something important, it's an instrument, it's not you, you're not the brain, but you're using the brain, and the brain has to be in good conditions. So these are valuable, there's valuable information and classes and so on how to keep your brain in the best condition possible. For the same reason, if your brain is totally messed up, even if you have awakened, it will bring you into identifications.
Well, if you're awakened and you have Alzheimer's, you may not remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. And we can avoid an Alzheimer if we understand how to avoid an Alzheimer. So Ray is saying, you may be awakening, but if you get Alzheimer or a severe Parkinson or any of these horrendous neurological diseases that are nowadays available, then you may not be functioning as an awakened being here, at least. Yeah, it's very mysterious. The Jean Klein, for example, was an awakened teacher. Jean Klein. Yes, and he got Parkinson, and it seems that eventually this degenerated into something very, very bad, and therefore the question is, what happened with his awakening at that level? Well, Jim Driver, who was his disciple, he said, no, that sparkling awareness that he was and was identified with was always in his eyes. Well, maybe, I don't know, but if you can avoid an Alzheimer or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do we know? Maybe people that have Alzheimer's or dementia really are, maybe some of them are awakened.
Yes. Diane is saying how we know, because maybe people that are in have those diseases, they are awakened and they can stay awakened. Yes, it's possible.
Because
It's-
they've lost
I-
their memory.
I don't know,
They're always in
Trapped in
the
the
now.
now.
They're always in the now.
They're always in the now. So-
They're always in the now.
They're trapped in the now.
Well, the last thing I want to mention for those who don't know this, but I offer also sessions of coaching on non-duality or life coaching, if you want to. It's and usually I do this in a set of 12 coaching sessions. I do accept also an individual that wants to have one session is fine, but usually coaching works better in a set of sessions. So these coaching sessions, like for example, I have an old student that he has been, in contact with me for quite a long time, and then a few days ago he called me and says, I'm going through something very difficult, and I would say he's awakened, and still it was hard, right? So, and I would like to do some sessions with you. So, okay, well, I usually charge $125 for an hour of coaching session, and I offer him a set of 12 sessions for $90, which was something very reasonable. He immediately said, "That's very reasonable. I can do that." So we began doing these sessions, and in 4 sessions, the problem had disappeared, and on top of it, he was having kind of a deepening of his awakening with a beautiful experience into beingness. It has been extremely helpful for him. So this is another option that you may consider, which is having coaching sessions one-on-one instead of having the classes, which I would say is the best, but anyway, it's a personal preference. So any other question? One more question and we go.
Didn't you want to talk about your event in December? No?
Sorry?
Your event in December?
In Joshua Tree.
Yeah. There is an event coming in January with a friend that he has been into extraterrestrial civilizations and channeling information from ET intelligence. That in his case he explains that they are advanced benevolent beings. So he has been in this for a long time. He's quite famous in Europe, and he goes to this. He can gather easily hundreds of people in Europe, and here is a bit unknown. However, and he has written several books on this subject. However, he's trying to bring his information here, and there will be this interesting event in 29 Palms. And I will be part of the event presenting with him the non-duality part. So you would say, well, it has to do, something so phenomenal like ETs and life of extraterrestrial civilizations with non-duality. And that's what I will try to explain in the event itself, in one of the talks, as well as there will be, in the event itself, it will be included the awakening protocol. So there will be a whole day devoted to the awakening protocol for 5 or 6 hours, and it will be a group presentation of the awakening protocol, which I have done quite a few times, and several satsangs, and he will present quite an interesting material for those interested in ufology or extraterrestrial life that I think are valuable. So if you are interested, just send me an email and I send you the information. If you haven't received yet through my mailing, if you haven't received the invitation, and I will send an invitation pretty soon. Another invitation. Yes.
Are aliens allowed to attend this?
Maybe we are.
Roy is asking if aliens are allowed. Yes, Roy, you can go.
Maybe we are all aliens, so coming from it.
You're welcome to go. Aliens are welcome to go.
There will be a live stream, right? Yeah, there will be a live stream.
Yeah, it will be live streamed too. You will be able to participate from the comfort of your home if you don't like the desert. But I would say, since we're close here in Los Angeles, at least for those of you who live close by, you can go to the desert, which is beautiful.
Is there parking spaces for spaceships?
Parking spaces for spaceships.
There's the whole desert.
Spaceships. Okay. All right. We are going too far out there. So take care, guys. Those online, Shalva, Lance, and Jim. Thank you for participating and coming and being with us. You're welcome, Lance. So thank you guys for coming here, and we have something now to eat, and you're welcome to stay and to chat. Take care, guys. Take care, guys.